Hello and welcome to this video on the changes in your body when you either donate or otherwise lose a kidney. Now before getting into the details, there are a few caveats. The first is that we are assuming that you've lost an otherwise perfectly functional kidney and not due to bilateral kidney disease, comorbidities, complications and so on. This is because the results and processes are much the same if you donated a kidney. But secondly, the other thing is that although some of the changes we describe occur in the case of diseases, or allows pathogenic reasons for removing a kidney, there are still some differences, and certainly not all aspects we will describe apply. With that out of the way, let's get on to what is happening. The process of donating a kidney to either someone you know, in exchange for a blood match donation from another, starting a kidney transplant chain and so on is called a living donation. Unsurprisingly, you would be able to donate 2 kidneys if it was not a living donation.
Yeah. Goodbye, Charlie. Yeah, goodbye, Charlie.
Goodbye? What? Hey, what's going on here? Hello? Who is that? Oh, what happened? Oh, they took my freaking kidney!
We've already explained what your kidneys do as part of the renal system. That is, the kidney in and of itself is an organ dedicated to blood volume management. In order to do this, it filters out solutes, and especially salts, that then draw water out of the renal system and into the urinary system via osmosis. A secondary effect of this, and in some ways intentional, is that other products, like urea, go into the waste that becomes urine. The driving factor behind this movement of water into urine is largely blood pressure as a product of blood volume. That is, as the amount of water in your blood goes up, the blood volume will rise. And this might seem obvious since blood is mostly water, but it bears saying just in case. When the volume of blood goes up in the confined spaces of the arterial and venous system, it causes an increase in pressure. After all, you are quite literally having to stretch the arteries and veins to fit this extra blood volume. This increase in pressure gets communicated to the brain, which sends hormones to the kidneys to increase urination. There are also hormones sent from other parts of the body as a result too, and these will in turn contribute to your increased urination and therefore reduction in blood volume. And now, what if you took away half of that system? Strangely enough, not a lot, but certainly something. First, the remaining kidney does change. It will get bigger. Living donors, or those who have had a kidney removed, are unlikely to develop any problems in the future when this happens. After all you've really done when you remove one kidney is increase the size of the other, and as a result, increase blood flow to it. The kidney function itself can provide up to 75% of the normal function of having 2 kidneys, although given that you've removed half of it, you'd expect it to only be 50%. So you get basically a 50% increase in function of one kidney. Some reports do place the figure of normal function at somewhere closer to 90%, although this is likely to be exceptions rather than the rule. The general progress after you donate a kidney is that there is an initial decrease, and it drops down from about 1 milliliter a minute to somewhere around 0.85, so a 15% loss. The following weeks see a gradual increase thereafter. Most follow-up studies of kidney function after donating have found that any increased functionality of the remaining kidney plateaus at about 5 years after donation. There is one slight caveat to this, and that is the actual removal process. If your kidney is removed via an open incision technique, which is when you wake up in a bathtub filled with ice, you'll need at least 6 to 8 weeks to recover. A laparoscopy, on the other hand, which is effectively a keyhole process, requires 2 to 3 weeks, and this latter one is nearly always done now for that reason, barring certain anatomical reasons not to do so. Recovery of either operation is relatively straightforward and involves living a somewhat sedentary life. You don't need to make any gross changes to what you're going to be doing, but it's better to try and maintain at least an elevated level of health compared to where you might have been beforehand, and certainly far more than the average individual. You shouldn't smoke or drink for at least several weeks after the surgery, although that's a fairly typical advice and may or may not be harder than you would expect. You can generally resume normal activities from about 6 weeks onwards. There is a big caveat to that though. Even from 6 weeks onwards, it's generally advised to avoid any activities that might cause damage to your remaining kidney. This includes contact sports and martial arts, amongst others. The other notable factor to consider, especially when we're talking about recovery, is that there is some indicators that higher uric acid content at baseline, that is before the surgery, is associated with less recovery of a post-donation function of your kidney. That is, you're less likely to see a particular improvement in the remaining kidney if you have higher uric acid content in your blood or urine before donating. Your doctor will likely, and should, if you intend to donate, discuss this with you and conduct the appropriate tests to be able to decide in your own way as to the value of donating or not. Other than this, living donations of kidneys will not change life expectancy, there's no risk of increased kidney failure, and there's pretty much no change in life, other than the fact that you're going to weigh slightly less, given you now have one kidney rather than two. This is, however, probably not the new fad diet. There is, let's say, some silver lining to this, but we need to talk about the clouds first, as not everything is strawberries and cream when it comes to being a living donor. There are some long-term risks, but these will vary drastically from person to person. The first is going to be that there may be a scar, particularly if they don't go with a laparoscopy instead. There is also some report of long-term pain and nerve damage from when the incisions are made, particularly again with an open incision. Hernias, intestinal obstruction are also possibilities, but they tend to be rare. There are some more common issues, but they're associated with having a single kidney, not necessarily a donation, although the donation leads to having a single kidney. This being high blood pressure, proteinuria, and reduced kidney function. The last one kind of being obvious since you've just halved the number of organs that are responsible for this. The silver lining to all this is a surprisingly big upside. If you donate a kidney through this sort of system where you're a living donor, and you do have kidney failure later on in life, you actually get given priority for a new kidney from a deceased donor, which arguably is not as good, but nonetheless, it's certainly better than waiting however long you need to wait for a kidney from somebody, and given the rates in America for this is perhaps a better option than waiting and hoping and then dying. Morbidity aside, this is what would happen as a living donor. You would donate your kidney, you go through up to 6 weeks of discomfort, you recover, and you go back to a normal life, for the most part. You may have a scar if it's an open incision, which you would have to make a decision about the value of when you're deciding to be a donor. You may have a slightly lower kidney function, which shouldn't be a surprise, and you may have some slight discomfort. For the most part, that is the worst you're going to worry about. But then again, you may well just have saved someone's life. So as a donor like that, you have to decide the value of your action and whether or not you're happy doing so. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it interesting, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please do post any comments, questions, or suggestions you have below.